All right, and here we are after a week off. Wrestling Unwrapped
And an
number
hour
15. What?
A week off and an hour delay. Thanks, Ketza.
As if most people are not listening live, but anyway. Wrestling Unwrapped number 15 with Harry and Patrick covering PWG Dio. Take it away, guys.
Before we actually start talking about the show, you know that On This Day feature on Facebook, Patrick?
Yeah.
Do you remember the show that you and Sean did when I was incapacitated for Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Apparently the link to our version of that is still active.
Oh. Interesting. I did not know that.
Indeed. If you check your On This Day, I tagged you in the post, so it should show up in your history.
I'll make sure to look at that.
To those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, hi everyone, I'm Harry Brothers, he's Patrick Ketza. We'll do official formal introductions here in a few seconds. I missed the Valentine's Day show due to the fact that it was my birthday and I had prior plans. Unfortunately, those prior plans are no longer a situation that I have to deal with, but case or sera in that regard. However, while I was gone for Valentine's Day, Patrick and Sean filled in and did St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was a redo of a show we had done on a previous network. Well, as it turns out, the original version of our coverage of that show is still available, and if Patrick's able to find it and use such, we may be able to post it into the Wrestling Unwrapped Facebook page for you all. Okay, now you can introduce us.
And I will see about that because that's an intriguing thing.
Indeed. We'll also have to repost the link to your and Sean's coverage of it so that way people can see the differences between your opinions then, which would have been about a year and a half ago, I think, and now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anywho, okay, carry on to the start of the show.
It's been delayed even more. Mostly my fault. I will take the blame on that. Obviously, being a holiday weekend, my family decided to make burgers and started cooking super late. Sorry for being late. Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to Wrestling Unwrapped 15. I'm Cancer Tata, and as he kind of already mentioned, he's Gary Broadhurst. And we're all very tight. Yeah. Based on a half-true story. And I can honestly say, Harry and I are already very tired from watching a very intriguing Indianapolis 500 today.
I somehow don't think people tuning in for DVD reviews care about our coverage of the Indy 500, although congratulations to Alexander Rossi. Spoiler alert.
It happened 6 hours ago. I think we're fine.
Yeah, but if people DVR sporting events. I know I used to when I had my DVR. I don't have a DVR anymore. I would.
Yeah, fair enough. Anywho. And as Sean mentioned before, we are heading back out west, and for the second time covering a PWG show, this time the first one that he ever did where they had a title dedicated to a fallen rock god. And we will be covering PWG Dio from 2010, June 11th, 2010 to be exact.
I have a moderately sacrilegious statement to make here, but I'm not a big Van Halen fan.
What would Van Halen have to do with Ronnie James Dio?
Wasn't he the lead singer after Eddie Van Halen quit?
That was Sammy Hagar, to my knowledge.
Yes. You're thinking of Black Sabbath. Wow, Harry.
Wow, Harry.
Wow.
Okay, forgive me. I'm not a
You know what?
person.
I think you just how dare you be covering a show about Dio and you get his part of his
history.
I'm
just going to state for the record that I am a pro wrestling gorilla fan, and truth be told,
I don't listen to a lot of classic rock.
Well, you're fired. I'm joking. This is whatever.
So, neener.
You are listening to the wrong kind of music then. Either way, this is the wrong
still
podcast
kind
for
of
that.
bad. But you getting back to the point, yes, it was over the fallen Ronnie James Dio, and at least, it's kind of gotten to a point where now PWG is doing this almost monthly. There are 3 main shows this year.
Hold on, do you know a Dio song, Harry?
We're not talking about me. We're talking about Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
I'm just asking you.
Answer the question. Honestly, no. Not off the top of my head. Rainbow in the Dark.
Yeah, Rainbow in the Dark is probably his most famous one. That's out of his solo stuff, but yeah. All right, that's enough talking about the man. We don't have to talk about the... Sorry.
I respect the contributions. I'm a huge music fan. It's just not my niche. It's not my genre.
I'm just messing with you, Harry. I'm not going to talk much on this episode, so I figured I'd get the jab in.
Oh, speaking of which, this particular episode is presented in association with LastWordOnSports.com as well as 401mania.com, and is a presentation of the W2M Network, and is sponsored by the Madhouse Toy Chest, stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest for all your wrestling needs. If you're a wrestling collector of any kind, DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, T-shirts, cups, pretty much anything wrestling related that you can think of, you can find it inside of the Madhouse Toy Chest. And if you mention that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped, when you make your purchase off of the Toy Chest store, if you send him a note with it, he'll include an extra gift inside of your order as well for mentioning that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped. Indeed, and thank you very much. As far as the association with the W2M Network, if Harry keeps pissing Sean off, this could very well be the last week that happens. We are a presentation of the W2M Network. That's what I said. I know.
I'm not going to kick you guys off because Harry doesn't know rock music.
No, Harry doesn't know classic rock music.
That would be about the stupidest, that would be about one of the stupidest reasons to ever.
Just want to state for the record that Harry doesn't know classic rock music. Harry listens to modern rock.
That would be the good kind of rock music then. But whatever. We're talking way too much about stuff that has nothing to do with the wrestling show.
Yeah, go back to mute, producer. Be gone, you. That is true. Sean doesn't have the show, so he's not even going to be helping us with the review. It's just Harry and I this week. Yeah, well, I think we got...
Y'all will be fine.
Yeah, I think we're fine. Speaking of which, I'm ready to go if you are. Indeed, and as we always do, kicking things off, let's go to the quick results with Mr. Harry Broadhurst. 24th or 27th, I forget the date I have written down. For this show? Yes. June 11th. You sure about that one? I'm looking at the DVD case right now. Oh, well, crap. Okay. Friday, June 11th, 2010. Okay, do you want to finish off the rest of the start of this too? From the American Legion Hall in Reseda, California, this is Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Dio 2010. Jesus, Christmas tree. Anywho.
What?
I know we're off to a fabulous start. Let's get to the results.
Wait, did you just say Jesus Christmas tree?
I did say Jesus Christmas trees, except
that is two things that have nothing to do with each other.
Oh my God.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go back to mute, Sean. Patrick, we need a new producer. Anywho, I'm not getting anywhere near that one, Harry. Just go with the results. Good Lord. There's about to be a new co-host after that statement. Anywho, Your opening contest sees the LTP Jerome Robinson, the little tiny player, or the long-time pimp, or there was one other one Excalibur used, and I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
Loves to Party, maybe?
Possibly.
And Johnny Goodtime, pre-Rock This Monster, defeats the team of Los Luchas, which would be Phoenix Star and Zocre returning to PWG for the first time in several months, when Johnny Goodtime pins Phoenix Star with a fisherman buster that he calls Man of the House. The reason this is funny is because he's billed as living in his mother's basement in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Moving on. Brandon Bonham, because there weren't enough Brandons in PWG at this time frame, defeats Ryan Taylor with a second Hammer of the Gods Canadian Destroyer at 12:29. Mr. Intensity Akira Tozawa defeats Scott Lost with a deadlift arm trap German suplex. I think I had that correct. Because he definitely stalled it before he snapped it back, which implies the deadlift. At 8:36.
I might add, it's the only match under 10 minutes.
Yes. The Cutler Brothers, Brandon and Dustin, and Joey Ryan defeat the Jackson 3. Okay, there's a reason behind that statement. It is what Shakara called them for King of Trios that year, and I stand by it. When Brandon Cutler pinned Malachi Jackson with a spiked tombstone pile driver. I think they have a name for it, but I don't believe Excalibur said it.
Yeah, I think I don't even know they called it a spike. I think he just called it an assisted tombstone.
I think he said tandem tombstone, but we're moving on.
Maybe.
Candice, whatever, defeats Christina Von Eerie with a CM Punk-influenced crooked moonsault at 11 minutes and 6 seconds. Chris Hero defeats Brandon Gatson with a rolling elbow at 22:58. Worthy of note, it was the only elbow strike that Hero threw in this match, which, if you were familiar with Hero around that time frame, is somewhat of a surprise. 22:58, I think I said that, but I just wanted to make sure. And your main event, the PWG Tag Team Champions, Peligro Abejas, the Danger Bees, of El Generic. Huh? You typed El Generic in the show preview. El Generico and Paul London defeat the team of Brian Kendrick, perhaps the Brian Kendrick, we're not sure, and Kevin Ezekiel Steen, when Paul London pins Kevin Steen with the shooting star press at 13:56. There you have it, folks.
Thank you very much, Harry. So, a very short show tonight with only 7 matches.
2 hours, 18 minutes, and 22 seconds.
Yeah, and the amazing part is, even with only 7 matches, like we said, 6 of them go over 10 minutes, 3 of them go over 15, and 2 of them go over 20.
Okay, to be fair, the over 10-minute thing is kind of a PWG staple. There are very few matches in PWG, even to this day, that go under 10 minutes.
That's true. At least they're giving wrestlers the time, or, they're killing the business, like Vader thinks.
Well, there's something to be said for overkill here. Look, I'm all for people getting the time when they need it, but at the same time, you run the risk of burning crowds out when your opening contest is going 15, 16, 17 minutes every show.
That's fair enough. And the opening contest, which we'll get into right now, being Luchas, Phoenix Star, and Zoker versus Johnny Goodtime and Jerome, God knows how many nicknames he has, Robinson. and this one goes over 15 minutes, and this is the damn opener.
Okay, first of all, I need to bring in our Spanish-speaking friend here. So I'm bringing the producer back in here if he's available.
Yes.
Zokre.
Zoare.
Zokre.
Not ringing a bell right now. You probably have to spell it out for me.
No, that's how it's spelled. That's what I'm trying to see.
As
with
in
your pronunciation.
typing it out for me.
Oh, well, you know. Well, anyways, there's a tilde over the E as well.
Ah. Well,
Okay, Zokre.
It's Zokre,
ah.
not Zoker.
Yeah, I mean, whatever
Don't
it's
get me
supposed
wrong,
to be is not ringing a bell in my head right now. I'm sorry.
Well, it was more for the fact that Patrick said Zoker, and seeing as
Oh,
you speak,
Zokre, yes. Zokre.
seeing as you speak fluent Spanish, I just wanted to help our Chicagoan friend understand the dialect at hand here.
Okay, Harry, I get it. I can't pronounce Spanish. Sorry.
Or spell it, apparently. Ask El Generic.
Jeez, guys.
I wasn't the one who thought you said an A. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, a very it's weird. It was kind of a fast opener where nothing happened. Because it wasn't by any means a bad match. It's just nothing seemed to happen.
Honestly, the only real big spots in the match are the dodge by Robinson and Good Time. Although Zokre did get off a pretty good-looking corkscrew plancha over the ring post himself, and then the finish.
Special.
And then the finish, he didn't get nearly that Rick O'Shea does. And then the finish itself, which, as I said before, is a really cool variation of the Fisherman Buster with a leg trap that Johnny Goodtime still employs when he was doing the Rock Ness Monster thing. And I think he's still active in PWG to this day as well, just under a different name.
I'd have to check that.
I know for 100% certainty that he's still active in PWG. He just doesn't use the name Johnny Goodtime anymore. Because I think once Yuma went to TNA is when he started to develop the new character.
Yeah, but I don't remember off the top of my head what the name is.
Likewise. We need to cover a more modern PWG show at some point. I'm working on that, so we'll get back to you guys as far as that goes down the road. The other thing that I would say here is out of these four men, I would argue that Good Time is probably the most famous in PWG lore, but that being said, I think that for the fans that were around Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and for the fans that have heard our previous reviews of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, obviously the team in this match and the individuals in this match that you're going to know are Los Luchas, and they are making their return here. They would not stick around very long this time. I don't think they would even make it to the Battle of Los Angeles, which would be a couple months later. They would be gone again. So,
yeah, if I recall correctly, I think there's only one more show between this and the 2010 BOLA, and that's the 7th anniversary show, PWG 7.
PWG 7?
Yep.
Okay, and then they go into... BOLA was 2 nights in 2010, right?
I think so.
All right. Because I know one of them, either 2010 or 2011, it was only 1 night, but I think 2010 it was 2. Anywho, one other thing I wanted to point out that I don't think we've mentioned yet at this point on the show is that the heavyweight champion is nowhere to be found.
As a matter of fact, I didn't even get a chance. I kind of forgot to look it up. Who was the champion?
I'm not sure, but I think Roderick Strong.
Because, yeah, that's really weird. I don't think it would be Roderick Strong, though. I don't think Roderick won it until when he took it off of Kyle O'Reilly.
Then Davey, maybe?
Hang on, I'm trying to look it up right now.
While he's looking for PWG's title history and such, let's go ahead and continue on with our discussion of the show as well. And that takes us into our second contest. And that was Brandon Bonham, one of the multiple Brandons. I think at one point there were like 4 Brandons on the roster. At this point, I think there's only 3. Cutler, Bonham, and Gatson.
To the point that Excalibur actually gets them mixed up in later matches.
Yes, and this particular Brandon sits in and does commentary, but we'll talk about that when we get to the 6-man tag match. Back to the point that I was making about this particular match here with Brandon Bonham and Ryan Taylor. Ryan Taylor would develop into a really, really good worker for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Ryan Taylor would be one half of one of the most entertaining stables in PWG in 2011 as part of the Fighting Taylor Boys with Brian Cage Taylor, a.k.a. Cage from Lucha Underground. They would be managed and sometimes teamed with their brother, Sexy Chucky T, Chuck Taylor. At this
real
point,
quick. The current PWG World Champion at this point is the American Wolf, Davey Richards.
So I was right when I said possibly Davey. Okay, then, moving on.
Yeah, he won it in February. He would be stripped of it in September.
Right before Battle of Los Angeles. Anywho, moving on. Back to the match at hand that we were just discussing here.
Correct.
Ryan Taylor, as I said, would turn into a very serviceable hand with the company, would turn into an excellent tag team worker, and his singles matches would get better. Brandon Bonham had some breakout performances at the 2009 Bola. Watching this match with a buddy of mine, I damn near fell asleep.
Yeah, this match was pretty boring. You know, the previous match didn't have a lot to it, but it still kept my attention. This one, it was struggling to even keep my attention.
Like, don't get me wrong. I just mentioned here that Brandon Bonham would have a very entertaining run at the 2009 Bola. He would also have several very good singles matches in PWG as well. And the issue, I think, comes into play here is that their personalities and their movesets are awfully similar. And a couple of the signature moves in this match, one of which we didn't get to see, which was the uh-oh drop kick, which is the B-boy style drop kick that Brandon Bonham does. And then the finish of the match comes off bad because originally, Brandon Bonham hits Hammer of the Gods out of an attempt at an Alabama Slam by Ryan Taylor. It does not land flush, so Brandon Bonham hits a second Hammer of the Gods, which also does not land flush. And I think that also takes some of the sting off of the match itself.
Sorry. Because when I was watching this, honestly, because of my work schedule, I legitimately did not have a chance to watch it until earlier today. So, post Indy 500, I turned the DVD on immediately and finished it about 2.5 hours before we started today, just because of my work schedule.
I rewatched it yesterday, so at least it's fresh in both of our minds.
Yeah, true, very true. The entire finishing encounter to this just goes down, I think, under the list of cluster you-know-whats, just because of the fact that, he has to hit the Hammer of the Gods twice to actually finish him off. But then not only that, neither of the moves come off looking that well because he can't catch it clean at all, and it just makes the whole ending sequence just kind of meh.
Yeah, when he hits it clean, Bonham's version of the Destroyer was really nice looking. I would argue that it was probably better than Petey's, but not quite as good as Adam Cole's. Because
Adam Cole's also one of the best in the business, so.
I'm a huge mark for the Panama Sunrise.
Yeah.
That being said, as far as this particular match goes, it just seemed like they were kind of off. They weren't connecting the way that you would expect two local talents trying to make their names on a major indie show would, you know? And one of the other things, too, and 411 Mania reviewer Ryan Rosansky talks about this in his review of the show as well, is that one of the things that you look forward to going into a PWG show, even a modern-day PWG show, is that they have a lot of standout California talent on these shows, guys that don't necessarily get their names known in other places. These were two of those guys at that time frame that were the breakout California stars. These guys, Brandon Gatson, the Cutler Boys, you know, these were people that were starting to make their name in the independent world, but weren't quite known commodities yet. So going into this match, the expectations had to be a little elevated, and then for them to put on the performance that they did, it had to be considered a disappointment.
Yeah, there's very little doubt there because, like you said, they were given a heck of a chance here. You know, they were given the no PWG time of well over 10 minutes, and like you said, I don't know if something just didn't mesh well, or was it, them feeling like they were almost facing themselves too much and it made for things to be awkward? Because, yeah, like, there were legitimately a couple times that I got that mixed up, and I won't even lie about that. Just because, they were kind of so similar in their cockiness and arrogance and, their like demeanor around the ring, that it doesn't help that they both had, I think, some long hair and all that. They just looked similar and came off as very similar. So, yeah, it made it kind of hard to deal with here.
One of the hardest things that you'll find out when you're an independent wrestler is it's very difficult to face somebody who has a similar style to yours. And it's one of the things that I think ended up helping guys like Brian Cage when they came into TNA, in that his look was so standout different than everybody else's in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla at the time, is that he became a commodity in and of himself. The problem for Ryan Taylor and Brandon Bottom at this point is there were 5, 6, 7 other guys that looked almost exactly like them on this show. Wrestled similar styles, had similar looks, same kind of gear set up in most cases. So it's nothing about them really stood out for this particular match, which is unfortunate because it's somebody that's had the opportunity to watch them succeed in other shows for PWG, because I own pretty much every Pro Wrestling Guerrilla show from 2007 up to like 2012. So having the opportunity to see them in as many matches as I've seen them in, it's just disappointing that this particular performance came off as clustered and cluttered as it did.
Yeah, so it's a shame that they couldn't have come up with something better. I'm looking at the card right now, going on what you had just said about wrestlers looking like them that were on this card.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Bottom, Ryan Taylor, Johnny Goodtime, Brandon Cutler, Dustin Cutler, 2 Point Malachi Jackson.
I agree.
If you really want to include them, the Young Bucks.
Well, at this particular point, though, I think the Young Bucks were distinctive enough that they had stood out on their own. They were making their waves known in other places here. And to be honest, their heel shtick was still relatively new in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla at this point as well, having just turned heel a couple of months earlier.
Fair enough. So, yeah, it's kind of a disappointing match here. But moving on, though.
Yes, well, let me introduce this match here because I want to talk about two guys who have never disappointed me when I've had the opportunity to watch them. And this match, despite its relative briefness, was no exception. As a longtime Pro Wrestling Guerrilla fan, there are certain people throughout the history of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla that as soon as I saw their name show up on the on-screen graphic to introduce the next match, I immediately started paying more attention to what was going on. Scott Lost is one of those people.
Get it right. The professional Scott Lost.
Yes. He, formerly of arrogance. But to the point that I'm trying to make here, the other name that ever since he burst into the scene in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and at this point he'd only been in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, I think Excalibur said this was only his third match in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. He was on an extended tour of the U.S. from Japan right now, was Mr. Intensity Akira Tozawa. Tozawa has made his name very well known in independent professional wrestling now. He is considered to be one of the stars of Dragon Gate right now. And there has been multiple rumors over the past couple of years of the WWE having an interest in Akira Tozawa. I heard something about him possibly being in the CWC.
Which, who the hell wouldn't want that?
Akira Tozawa is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated indie talents of all time. And this is considering all the praise that he gets from a lot of people. He's still underrated. He is never a guy who has carried a company, but he is a guy who always could.
And what better way to feature him than by having him in the shortest match on this show?
Yeah, that pissed me off that the opener got 15 minutes and these two got 8.5.
Yeah. Remember, folks, that we mentioned 6 out of the 7 matches go over 10 minutes? This is the one match that doesn't, and it only goes 8.5.
Yeah, and it features arguably two of the best talents on the show.
Granted, at the time, I don't think they would have realized that Akira Tozawa was probably one of the best talents that they would have.
I think Akira would have his standout performance at Bola when he would wrestle Chris Hero. I don't know.
That sounds about right. Sorry.
I don't know if you have the 2010 Battle of Los Angeles, but if you don't, I highly recommend it specifically for that match because for about 20 minutes, and pardon my language here, Hero and Tozawa beat the shit out of each other.
I do not. I have 2015 and 2014. I'll have to look into getting 2010. It shouldn't be that hard.
Talk to your friends at High Spots.
I'm trying to get them to sponsor us, but no go so far.
Well, highspots.com for all your independent wrestling DVD needs.
That Jason doesn't have.
Yes, that's true. If you need ROH, go to Jason. If you need any of the other indies, go to High Spots.
Good Lord. Way to piss off our sponsor, Harry.
Hey, I said if you need ROH, go to Jason. Because most of the ROH shows that Jason sells are out-of-print shows anyways.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's not like you could get them at High Spots. Shoo! Sorry, I had an Eddie Kingston moment there. I'm good.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, as far as this match, part of it felt weird because it was weird seeing Scott Lost being cheered because he was.
Mm-hmm.
And also to me, boy, does Akira Tozawa look so different here compared to now. Like that took me out of the match, just noticing how different Tozawa looks. They took me out of the match for 30 or 40 seconds. But, I mean, in terms of the match, Harry gave high praise to the both of them earlier, and yeah, they only get 8.5 minutes, but those 8.5 minutes, they absolutely deliver, through the end when I feel like the right person did win here in Tozawa because he was still trying to garner his name in PWG, and you are correct. I think Excalibur mentioned towards the end that, this was only Akira Tozawa's third match in PWG, so he's probably still trying to get over with the fans there. Granted, he was probably already there, but, why not have him go over a PWG mainstay like the professional Scott Lost, just to try and kind of push his name up even more.
Well, speaking of the professional here, actually, this would be his next to last Pro Wrestling Guerrilla match.
Interesting.
You mentioned earlier PWG 7.
Yes,
Do you own that show?
I do not. I own 10 and 11.
I own 7. And at 7, Scott Lost takes on the returning to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, Scorpio Sky. It is Scott Lost's retirement match.
Eek.
So, knowing what we know now, that we didn't know then, specifically being that Lost was on his way out anyways, it makes perfect sense for Akira Tozawa to get this one here, and it definitely puts him in the ring with a victory over an established PWG name, like you said, before he would get into the ring with another hugely established PWG name, specifically being that of Chris Hero at the Battle of Los Angeles, as we've previously talked about.
Yeah, because even if you really want to think about it, this show and PWG 7, those two shows mainly are guys trying.
Huh? I didn't say anything. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What I was saying though is those two shows were pretty much guys trying to push their name up enough to be considered probably to be put into the 2010 Bowl. Because at this point, Bowl was starting to gain steam because the TPI was starting to lose its luster. And I'm trying to remember, was it 09 or 10 or something that the TPI was started and never finished or never started?
I do believe the 2009 TPI got canceled.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. So right now the TPI name is... Go ahead.
I was just going to say the 2008 TPI definitely happened, because I believe the 2009 one was canceled.
So, by this point, the TPI name was kind of starting to be on a little bit of a downfall, so the BOLA was starting to climb up a little bit. So now you're going to want guys trying to get into it.
Real quick, can I interrupt for a second here with breaking news from my notebook, okay? Two things. One, Scorpio Sky would defeat Scott Lost at PWG 7 in his retirement match. I was correct. He pinned Scott Lost with his own finisher. And at PWG 7, Akira Tozawa would take on somebody else who has a little bit of lore in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, but was more commonly known as one half of the best tag team in the world at this point.
Which half?
It would be one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Sabin.
Yes, please.
So there you have it. That's from PWG 7, July 30th, 2010.
Are you sure that it's July 30th? Because you thought the night show was June 27th.
I actually wrote down the date on the at the start of the notebook when I wrote out the show title and the length of the DVD. So yeah, I'm positive on this one.
Okay.
Thank you for being an asshole about it.
Hey, you started it. Anywho, moving on. We go from the shortest match on the show to the longest match.
Wrong.
Hero and Gatson is about minutes longer.
Yeah. Well, we go to one of the only two matches that does go over 20 minutes.
Yeah, but at least this one actually justifies the time it gets. But we'll talk more about that when we get to Hero and Gatson.
And in this case, it is the Jackson Three of Malachi Jackson, Nick Jackson, and Matt Jackson, the last two being better known as the Young Bucks, against the Cutler Brothers, Brandon number 2 for tonight, and Dustin Cutler teaming with Joey Ryan.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, and I'm sure you will because you enjoy doing so much like I enjoy correcting you when you're wrong. The Young Bucks were still Generation Me at this point.
2010. It may be coming near the end.
Yeah, I think it would have been either July or August that they would leave TNA, but at this point I do believe they were still Generation Me.
Yeah. But they were considered the Young Bucks here.
Well, of course, they were never not the Young Bucks in PWG.
Yeah.
At this time, if I am not mistaken, the Young Bucks were actually partial owners of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and may still be to this day.
Considering their booking, I wouldn't be surprised.
All the same, carry on.
Anywho. But yeah, this one is just complete six-man mayhem. Like, there's no two ways about it. The one major outstanding thing, as much flack as they catch, I do actually love the Young Bucks' original finisher, which was more bang for your buck. I do still love that as a finisher, even if there's a lot of flipping in it. And two, holy crap, do the Jackson 3 cut off the ring for so long when Joey Ryan's in the ring with them. Like, it's a 23-minute... Sorry, real quick. It's a 23-minute match. They probably have to get cut off on their side of the ring for a good 5 minutes.
Just real quick here, I wanted to point out as far as the extended time that Joey Ryan spent in the ring there. I'm not certain, but it looked to me for a while there like Joey Ryan was legitimately out of it. Like he had gotten his bell wrong.
He very well could have, because he took a couple shots here. You know, and actually, I think you want to know how rare of a match this actually was? I think Joey Ryan actually delivers more super kicks than the Young Bucks do.
That depends. Do we count the post-match shenanigans? Because that was
within the confines of a match, because Joey Ryan wasn't involved in the post-match.
Okay, that's fair then, because there were a lot of super kicks post-match.
Yeah, I think I counted like 6.
You're funny.
15.
That's probably closer to accurate. Two individual each, 2 doubles, and then a third double. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14.
Legitimately within the confines of 2.5 minutes. Yeah, 2.5 minutes. And no, we're not kidding, folks.
Yeah, all the flack the Bucks get about throwing as many super kicks as they do today, back then it was way worse.
Yeah. Aside from the ending to Global Wars. This year's Global Wars, I mean.
I haven't seen it. Can't answer that.
Supposedly they deliver somewhere in the neighborhood of 60.
Oh, Jesus Christmas trees.
Would you stop saying that?
Nope. It's funny.
To you. Getting back to this match, though.
Would you prefer Jeebus Christmas trees?
Sweet Jeebus. Oh, wrong company.
What are the odds that Phil Colvin actually listens to us?
Who knows?
I'm going to go with
when we cover AAW shows. Probably when we cover an AAW show he does.
Well, that's a fair point, actually. We need to start covering more AAW shows, because I'm pretty sure if we mentioned that we're covering AAW to Colvin and St. Holmes, they'd put us over.
You ain't speaking for me. I don't know what Phil was going to do.
Anywho.
But also, we have to cover a show that they actually like.
Well, yeah, we can't exactly get away with doing Epic again without pissing off people in brass at that particular company. But anyway, let's move on before we burn any further bridges here, and let's continue talking about this match here. One thing that you said that I actually do want to agree with you wholeheartedly on, I have watched a lot of tag team wrestling over the years, and as you know, my broadcast colleague on The Reaction on Mondays, Jimmy Christopher, is one of the preeminent voices for tag team wrestling. So he's watched quite a bit of tag team wrestling himself. In my opinion, More Bang for Your Buck is probably top 5 as far as all-time tag team finishes go.
I would probably put it in my personal top 5 as well. And like we said, the young, okay, here's the one goofy thing that popped up with this match, and it has to do specifically with this finish. Young Bucks hit the More Bang for Your Buck. I believe Nick goes for the pin. Or no, I think it was Matt goes for the pin. Nick and Malachi Jackson are both standing side by side to try and prevent anyone from jumping in to get the or to break up the pinfall, and somebody sneaks right by them and breaks up the pinfall.
Yeah, they weren't exactly paying much attention.
Apparently not. Then again, Matt and Nick weren't even paying attention to Malachi Jackson after Malachi Jackson hits, no, I'm not kidding, folks, a 450 arm drag.
Which I just want to state for the record that bothered me.
It bothered the hell out of me.
You know what the issue with Malachi was? Is he was trying too hard to beat his older brothers rather than developing his own moveset. And unfortunately, most of the moves that Malachi did develop on his own were superfluous. Specifically, that particular move you just mentioned, the 450 arm drag. He does a 450 in air rotation, lands on his feet, and delivers an arm drag, ladies and gentlemen. He literally could have done the same thing standing still.
So actually, technically, because he lands on his feet, it's a 360 arm drag.
Anywho,
I'm not kidding. He lands on his feet. A 450 requires you land in a splash because that's the extra 90 degrees.
I don't disagree with you, but take that up with Excalibur, not me.
Okay. But I thought you were sandbagging me like you thought I was joking. I'm not.
No. As a commentator, I'm very well aware of what you meant.
But yeah, this whole match, I mean, the match itself wasn't bad. Was there a lot of chicanery? Yes. Were there quite a few dives to the outside? Yes, but they still spent less time outside than the next match does. But, I mean, it wasn't a bad match by any means. It wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of people who complain about the Young Bucks in later years. They actually showed tag team psychology in this one. So, but, you know, besides that, like I said, it wasn't a bad match. But, yeah, this was one that at least warranted going over 20 minutes. You know, just because of the sheer number of people, plus the names that a lot of those people have, with Joey Ryan, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, and to a point, Brandon and Dustin Cutler. So, you know, not a bad match by any means. And mostly it was a lot of fun. It was just great to see a lot of things work out. And the one thing I really, really did not like was the tandem tombstone, spike tombstone, whatever you want to call it, assisted tombstone, however you want to call it, because that actually looked kind of dangerous. Like, it looked like they came close to actually spiking him.
No, I don't disagree. And one of my biggest concerns with that move has always been them sticking people right on the top of their head, because I know they brained somebody before with it. And I actually believe that there may have been an injury as a result of that move, which led to them stopping doing it for a while. I cannot confirm that, but I I do think I remember hearing a story about that.
I could see why, because, you know, when it's done right, it can be done safe and still look badass. But the one that I watched them do on this show looked dangerous. You know, it looked like they were within a couple inches of framing them. So, but yeah, not a bad match by any means.
I would argue definitely better than the first two. I don't know if it was as good as Akira Tozawa and Scott Lost, although I give them credit for, yeah, you mentioned the fact that it was an extended heat segment on Joey Ryan, but for the vast majority of the match, they did keep the pace up pretty high.
Yeah, they kept it up very, very low.
So I would argue that probably 1A and 1B as far as this match in Akira Tozawa and Scott Lost to this point.
That's a fair assessment right now. But, you know, we still got 3 more matches to go through, so we'll see how things continue to go.
Well, all right, so with that being said, let's move into our next contest here. And we're both big proponents of women's professional wrestling on this show. We've covered multiple women's wrestling shows both here and in our previous iteration on a different network. One of the names that we've discussed before, specifically your distaste for her, is one Christina Von Eerie. It is her, and she is just making her debut in wrestling around this time frame, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
She had just started a couple months prior, I do believe. It is her taking on PWG mainstay Candice LeRae, the future Mrs. Johnny Gargano in current parlance. At the time, I believe she was Chris Hero.
I think she would have been gone with Chris Hero, considering Chris Hero was kind of heel in his match.
I mean, I think they were together at this point. I don't believe she was with Joey Ryan yet.
Oh, she definitely wasn't with Joey Ryan yet. That wouldn't be for probably 2 more years.
Right, it would definitely be a ways down the road before the allegiances would switch there in the world's cutest tag team, or the world's cutest couple, world's cutest tag team, whatever it would become, would develop there. So this particular match is a singles women's match. I do believe only the second or third time that had happened in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla up to this point here, as it is the aforementioned Candice LeRae and Christina Von Eerie. It is incredibly noticeable how much better Candice LeRae has gotten over the years.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this was probably only the second or third all-female match in PWG history, and that's something that keeps up even to today. They really don't. I couldn't even tell you the last time they had an all-female match. As fireworks go off in the background by me, so if you do hear those, sorry.
Woo, party!
Memorial Day weekend. What do you want?
America. Moving on.
Anywho, yeah, it's clear as day how much better Candice would end up getting. Not to say that she's bad here, but as it is. All right, I'm gonna go into kind of a little bit of a scumbag fan territory here, but knowing how good Candice would get, you can kind of see all the shortcuts that they would end up taking here, because they would spend a lot of their, I believe, 13 minutes?
11, I think. Hold on.
Okay.
We'll go with the notebook back, but continue.
But they would spend a lot of time outside, which is usually seen as a shortcut to just try and kill time. And I would say almost half the match they were spending outside.
11 minutes and 6 seconds. But yeah, no, a good portion of that was spent outside, brawling outside, and then the whole bit with the guy in the crowd, with Candice kind of giving him a lap dance and then using him to prevent Christina from throwing what looked to be an attempt at a German suplex on the floor.
To be fair, the guy kept his hands up.
Smart man.
Very smart man. But I think this match is kind of what happens when you have two relatively new wrestlers in an incredibly hot crowd. So you got to figure out something to keep them happy. So they figured, okay, fight on the outside because, you know, like they had mentioned, at this point, Candice was only just coming into her own as her own person in PWG, and Von Eerie was probably less than a year into her career, if even remotely that long.
Well, the other thing, too, that I think we need to point out for the non-PWG historians is that Candice LeRae actually developed the following she did, not because of her in-ring work, but because of her work as a managerette, or a valet, I guess you would say. When she was originally with the Human Tornado, and then they ran a very unfamily-friendly gimmick with Tornado, Candice LeRae, and Chris Hero. Tornado, how do I put this politely? Domestically abusing?
That might be an understatement.
Well, it's the PG way I can say it and get away with it on this particular broadcast.
Yeah.
Constantly abusing Candice LeRae, both mentally and physically, leading up to the eventual babyface turn for Candice as well as for Chris Hero that would blow off in a guerrilla warfare match.
Yeah,
okay, continue.
It was, you know, a very controversial thing, but, you know, this is Candice post that. Human Tornado's nowhere to be found on this show either. And actually, I'm not even sure if he would ever come back.
I honestly don't know without looking it up. It's been a while.
Yeah. So, you know, this match isn't bad if you know that they're still relatively new into their careers. If you're going into this expecting like a current Von Eerie and LeRae match, you're going to be severely disappointed. If you go into this remembering they're still relatively new, it's a very serviceable match. It's not bad at all. You know, and yes, I have my problems with Von Eerie. You know, not the biggest fan of her, but I'll give credit where it's due, and this match wasn't bad. The one thing that was bad, and I don't know if it was this match or the previous match. All right, real quick, just to preface. Obviously, PWG mainstay and all around probably one of the best just in the professional wrestling business, Excalibur is on the mic for the entire night. However, the one thing that isn't consistent is who's doing it with him. So he had, at various points of the night, Joey Ryan, Kevin Steen, Rick Knox, Brandon Bonham, and I think one more with him. Oh, Chris Hero. So he had 5 different commentators, or 5 different wrestlers that commentated with him. I think it was either the last match or this match that we had Brandon Bonham on the mic. We may have had it for both, because I know the last 2 were Joey Ryan. Bonham was boring.
It was the 6-man tag, not this one, I believe.
See, I could have sworn he was on this one, too, because I remember... Or maybe it's Joey Ryan talking about punk rock music?
Yes. No, Rick Knox.
Oh, okay. But that also says to you the fact that there's a small issue with constantly changing the commentators and not mentioning them by name.
No, he actually says that it was Rick Knox because he mentions that Rick Knox used to fill in for somebody in the Dead Kennedys band for like a 6-month run or something.
Maybe 1981 to 1981.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's still kind of an issue that we run into is the fact that the commentators were constantly changing. And Excalibur does mention the names, but he kind of mentions them in passing, where if you're not fully paying attention, you're going to miss it. I did not realize that Chris Hero started the show until about 10 minutes into the match, for the first match.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention, you definitely can't tell. I mean, he has a very distinctive voice, but if you're not really listening for it, then you can't tell that it's not Excalibur talking to Chris Hero.
Yeah, so that was the problem I ran into.
Well, one of the other things, too, that we need to mention as well is the fact that, let's not forget that for the era of PWG that we covered originally, there was a set group of commentators that it was always one of three guys, It was either Excalibur, Disco Machine, or Taro. And it was always some variation of those three inside of the commentary table. It never changed beyond those three.
As opposed to tonight, where now we're talking about 6. But the one thing that would stay consistent, I believe, is Joey Ryan would always cover like the final 2 matches. Give or take.
I think similar to Portia Perez, he would wait until the match after his match and then come back and cover the rest of the show, like Portia used to do for Shimmer.
Yeah, she'd leave like the 2 matches before would turn 2 matches after.
Usually 1 or 2 matches, but yes, exactly.
But, at least getting back to this match, I mean, like I said, it's not bad if you go into it realizing that they're still new. They hit a lot of things. Yes, Candace does hit a pretty good dive to the outside, but at the same time, I'm trying to remember what it was.
Try that again. I didn't hear you. You cut out.
Sorry. Candace does hit a nice dive to the outside. I think that was her. But I'm trying to remember what Candace was trying to do, and she could barely lift Von Eerie.
No, I'm drawing a blank right now too. I know there were a couple ugly. I know there were a couple ugly-looking slams in this match. So
that may be what I'm thinking of. That there was at least one time where Candace was trying to go for like a body slam or an Alabama slam or something, and she could barely get Von Eerie up.
Well, I think that has everything to do with their lack of experience at this point, though. If you're expecting the Candice LeRae that we would see in AIW, AAW, Shimmer, Shine, wherever else she's working these days, back then you're going to be in for a rough awakening. If you're expecting the Christina Von Eerie that made her name in 2012, 2013 in CZW back then, you're not going to see that.
You're going to have a bad time. Sorry, I had to.
It's okay. I think that'll be it for this match, though.
Hell, I'd rather talk about this one than the next one, and I'm saying that as someone who's a big Chris Hero fan.
Okay, I feel the need to preface this statement by stating that I've had the opportunity to work with Chris Hero before. It was a complete and total class act when I had the opportunity to work with him. One of the better indie veterans that I've ever had the opportunity to work with.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I was going to say, anytime that I've encountered Chris Hero, too, he's been nothing but class.
That being said, the strike-heavy Chris Hero that predominantly existed around this time frame, both here in PWG as well as in Ring of Honor, bored the hell out of me. And it's not
real quick. The next match, the sub-main event, technically, is Chris Hero versus Brandon Gatson. Brandon number 3 on the night.
Yes. Well, this is a particular Brandon who had been on a tear in PWG, though, and who would, I do believe, as Excalibur would point out, would have been a semifinalist at the 2009 Battle of Los Angeles. This was somebody that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla saw something in and pushed to the moon. This was a guy who Excalibur himself would point out was wrestling for a while, took an extended break, and then came back and never lost a step. That being said, this is a Brandon Gatson who, for the vast majority of this 23-minute match, gets his ass beat. Now, I understand you want to make a guy look tough by being in there trading shots and everything with Hero, but at the same time, doesn't he actually have to trade shots with Hero rather than having short, sporadic bursts in between getting his butt handed to him?
Yeah, that drove me nuts about this match, and I was even texting you while I was watching this. Because, like I said, this match goes, the better part, close to 25 minutes. I think I texted Harry about 12 to 15 minutes into the match, and I texted you, does Gatson hit an offensive move?
It was something along those lines for that text.
Yeah. And that was something that I couldn't believe. You have a guy who's on a super roll in Brandon Gatson, and you have, and not only that, he's being put over on commentary too, as is Chris Hero. But he got the Mikey Whipwreck treatment here, where he doesn't hit his offensive move for 2/3 of the match. Because, yeah, Chris Hero beats his ass for most of this match. And I found myself getting bored.
Well, here's the thing. That whole strike-heavy Chris Hero thing there, like, how do I put this so that I don't offend? Chris Hero is one of the best damn wrestlers, pure wrestlers on this planet. And at the time of this particular show, Chris Hero, and I said this to Jason as we were watching, because I watched this show with Jason while I was hanging out with him. We grabbed dinner and then we watched the show last night. Very good. I turned to Jason, I said, if that's Chris Hero would have shown up in WWE and been able to stay in WWE with the look that he had back then, he would have been a WWE World Heavyweight Champion. That being said,
I would agree.
That being said, at this particular point, with all of the kicks and the strikes that Hero was throwing at this point, his matches became almost anticlimactic. In that it wasn't a case of what he was going to do, it was a case of how much he was going to do. Similar to the complaints that the fans have about the Young Bucks these days. That it becomes a lot of repetition in their matches. With Hero, it became a lot of repetition. It became a lot of elbow strikes. It became a lot of forearms. It became a lot of big boots. There was one series of like 3 Yakuza kicks that lasted almost 2 minutes.
I have a hunch you don't watch very much Chris Hero now.
It's been a while since I've seen any of his indie stuff. I'm a little bit out of the game as far as my whole modern independent wrestling collection goes. But carry on.
Because right now, Chris Hero's also very strike-heavy. Very strike-heavy. He might actually be more strike-heavy than he was in this match. But for some reason, and I don't really know what it is, but fans are more into it now. Like here, you could tell the crowd was getting bored with well, okay, the crowd was also, starting to hate Chris Hero. There were a couple not so flattering chants throughout the night.
Yes, words we cannot repeat on a family-friendly podcast.
Because we're a family-friendly podcast.
We're on a family-friendly network. We kind of have to be.
Yeah, fair enough. But, yeah, for some reason, the 2010 strike-heavy Chris Hero, fans didn't like so much. 2015, 2016 strike-heavy Chris Hero, very, very good. Like, very good. So something has definitely changed in the last 5-6 years.
Well, I think there's been more of an MMA influence into the world of independent professional wrestling these days, whereas back then, what Hero was doing wasn't really seen as such. It was seen as almost a ripoff or a parody of what maybe they thought MMA wrestling would be like, and the fans just weren't having it.
Yeah, it could very well have been that.
I also think PWG fans were sick of Hero on top of the company at this point, too.
Maybe.
Let the record state that, do me a favor and correct me if I'm wrong here, I know most of Hero's signature moves. And having the opportunity to speak with him and talk to him and get like a list of what all I should be looking out for when I had the opportunity to call his match, I have a pretty decent idea. I think the only signature move besides the elbows and the forearms and the big boots that Hero hit in this match was the cravat buster.
I think you would be right.
That was the only signature one that I think I saw him hit, and that was the hanging cravat that he does that kind of turns into a variation of Mickey Rox's old Barbie Crusher.
Yeah. Kind of a front-facing backpack bomb.
By the way, since I forgot to do it, Mickey!
Rox!
Okay, sorry, we had to preserve the integrity of the show.
Because we have integrity.
Some of us more so than others.
Damn right. By the way, I will give one extra mention. Big pop to Excalibur for mentioning the Chicago Blackhawks winning the Stanley Cup.
I won't repeat the text message that I sent you, but that was my inclination off of the Blackhawks from this show.
Geez, sorry. But yeah, if for any hockey or Blackhawks fans, Excalibur actually does mention there and gives a congratulations to the Chicago Blackhawks, who would have won the Stanley Cup only maybe 3 or 4 days prior to this show. I don't remember the exact date. I think it was June 7th, but I couldn't talk about that.
Can I just point out that Excalibur lives in Detroit and this is sacrilegious?
Oh, well.
Nope, not oh well.
Hey, at least he's respecting hockey.
Okay, that's fair. And it's not Joey Ryan talking baseball for 40 minutes.
Oh God, him and those stupid Angels.
Hey, I like Joey Ryan and I like baseball, but I don't need to be talking about baseball on a wrestling show. Speaking of which, did you watch any of the World Series today?
Yes, at least Excalibur's mention of the Blackhawks was only about 6 seconds. He just said congratulations to the Blackhawks for winning the cup. That was it.
Okay, back to the show at hand.
Yes, so, but yeah, my God, this match was one-sided and boring. And I hate saying that about Chris Hero. I really do. I'm a big Chris Hero fan. But this match was one-sided and boring.
You never really felt like I just confused the two Brandons. You never really felt like Brandon Gatson had a chance to win. And you know how I previously mentioned the PWG 7 show the following month, the anniversary show?
Yeah.
Given the matches that these two were in the following month, it's not entirely surprising that this match went down the way that it did. Would you like me to share?
I was waiting for it. Go ahead.
Brandon Gatson is in a six-person intergender tag team opener. Chris Hero faces PWG heavyweight champion Davey Richards.
I know who wins that one.
I got a pretty good idea, but
considering I just mentioned when Davey Richards lost the belt.
Exactly. So regardless, all right, let's get back to the rest of the show here. I think we got one match left.
Exactly, and it is the main event for the PWG World Tag Team Championship, as essentially tag teams collide, but not in the way you would think.
X tag teams collide.
What?
X tag teams collide. It's Generico versus Lundrick, but on opposite ends.
Pretty much. So it is the World Tag Team Champions, Peligro, Abejas, El Generico, and Paul London, and they took on the other half.
Time out.
What?
Peligros, Abejas.
There's no S. It's Peligro.
It's Peligros. It's Poro.
Yes, if they're talking about two guys, it would be S at the end.
It would be
Well,
Peligros.
I'm telling you how they pronounced it, how it's on the DVD, how it's on the DVD case. There's no S.
Excalibur says Peligros when he does the introduction.
He says
And
both.
he's a faux Mexican, so I'm inclined to believe him.
Whatever.
He's Mexitronian. Okay. I think I just made up a phrase. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Sean. Peligros Abejas literally translated danger bees.
Abejas. There's no R. It's
Oh,
Abejas.
okay. It's danger bees?
Yes, the dangerous bees.
Well, I guess it could have been worse. They could have been the killer bees.
That wouldn't have
Now, real quick, why are you not getting any flack for adding the R, but I get it for getting an S that doesn't exist on half of the advertising for this match?
Sean corrected me. We're moving on.
Wait, I did correct Harry. What did you want me to?
And here's the difference, Patrick. They expect me to screw up. You're the host.
Anyway. Paul London and El Generico. Is there a problem with my pronunciation of Generico?
You actually said no this time, so no, there is not.
Okay, very good. Screw you. And they're taking on the other half. AKA the Spanky Brian Kendrick, whatever the hell you want to call him. And, of course, Kevin Steen.
Kevin Ezekiel Steen.
Sorry.
And if you don't get that reference, I feel sorry for you because it's freaking hilarious.
I do, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Before Brian Kendrick was released by the WWE, which would have been right before this show, he was teaming with
Ezekiel Jackson as his partner or whatever.
As his bodyguard. Back when he was the Brian Kendrick.
Interim WWE champion, the Brian Kendrick.
Yes. Words we never thought we'd say.
Words we never thought we'd read. Anyway. And yes, Kevin Ezekiel Steen. Remember, folks, you know how it's kind of shoved down people's throats now that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have been fighting for the better part of 14 years in their rivalry? Well, here we are with a match 6 years ago, and they're fighting. We weren't kidding, folks. They've had a 14-year rivalry that included being teammates.
And Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions.
Very correct. Very, very true. But it also included that ladder war.
I believe, actually, they were also Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Tag Team Champions for a while as well.
I believe so, and I know El Generico's final match in PWG was also for the World Tag Team Championship.
It's too bad he had to go take care of his orphans.
Yeah, the orphans needed him.
True story. I mean,
Anyway.
it's nice that he brought his doppelganger cousin back across the border for us to enjoy, but not the same.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Sean to say something smarmy. I heard a guffaw.
What?
Anyway. So,
you know what my problem with this match was? Yeah, you know what my problem with this match was? Do you remember the match time? Do you remember what I said the match time for the opening contest was?
Yep.
15 minutes and 36 seconds. Do you remember what I said the match time for this match was?
13:42?
13:56, which means the opener got a minute and a half more than the main event, featuring arguably the four biggest stars on the independents.
Not only that, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't this like the third shortest match on this show?
It's definitely up there. I think it's like out of the 7 matches, I think it's like 4th in terms of match length.
Yeah. Because Hero and Gatson is number 1, 6-man tag is number 2, the opener is number 3,
and then I believe this is 4th.
Yeah. And then I think it goes Bonham Taylor, LeRae Von Erie, and then Lost in Tozawa.
Correct.
Why is your main event only 13 minutes? 14 rounded.
Why is the other match between two of the best talents in the show only 8.5 minutes?
Why was that opener 15?
These are the answers that we'll never have.
Yeah.
Do you want my honest opinion? Probably because Paul and Brian were both high as
Kites.
I believe to myself there.
Well, I would have said high as kites.
Regardless, those two have never meant a joint that they didn't love. And I'm willing to bet that factoring into the decision for this match to go as short as it did was the fact that both of them were probably in altered states.
Which is weird because Paul London cuts a promo and it doesn't seem that bad. Cuts a promo before the match. Actually, almost everybody cuts a promo before the match. I think it's 10 minutes of promos before the match ever actually begins.
Which might be where the match time for this match went. It went to all the promos.
Because I think Steen goes 4.5. I know London goes over 4 as well.
To be fair, El Generico does not cut a promo. Also, to be fair, El Generico doesn't speak English.
That's true. He spoke very broken English even around the time he retired.
Yes.
But, I mean, as far as this match goes, the match itself, it feels like it never fully gets going.
Agreed.
Once again, that could be due to London and I almost said Lundrick. Due to London and Kendrick being in an altered state, who knows? But it feels something seems off.
No, you would have been accurate calling them Lundrick because I think it was both of them.
Because, like, when Steen and Generico are in there, you know, things are going pretty well, but it seemed like if it wasn't specifically Steen versus Generico, things slowed down really badly, even up to Paul London going for, you know, his shooting star press, which, if it was really that bad, I don't know that I would trust him doing that. But I want to
state, just real quick, I want to state for the record that I believe that there's been more times than he's probably been willing to admit that London has performed in an altered state. That being said, I don't think we're talking like Jeff Hardy bad here.
Victory Road 2011 bad?
Still saying you need to get a copy of that show so we can rip it to shreds.
No. I have standards. They may be low, but I still have standards.
I don't. Moving on.
Anyway. Yeah, it's just, the match never gets going. It's short. And remember, this is for the World Tag Team Championship. This was not a non-title, this was not a non-title match. This was for the championship. So, what the hell?
I reiterate the statement that I made before, in that I think a lot of the time that would have been dedicated to this match ended up going to promos.
It had to.
At the same time, when you have 4 men like this advertised for your main event and it doesn't deliver, it makes the entire show seem lackluster by comparison.
And the problem is, yeah, it does.
Like,
especially not only that, but not only that, this is your main event, and this is covering for the fact that your world champion's not there.
Right, so you're putting 4 of the best names on the independents in the main event, and then they're going to work for a grand total of about 14 minutes?
Sure. It just, yeah, something was definitely wrong here.
Anywho, you know what my thing about it would be? And
what?
The issue that I would have here, and part of this has to do with the whole advertised main event thing, and part of this has to do with the fact that Hero and Gatson was the kind of match that it was. So this was back-to-back matches in your main event level that were both tremendously disappointing. And I'm not so much disappointed with the in-ring content provided by this particular match as I am disturbed by the length of this particular match.
Yeah, it seems like the match times for the last 2 matches should have been split.
And especially if the Hero Gatson match was going to be basically an extended squash.
Yeah, because if you didn't need a 23-minute squash, that the only main event level match that I can think of that would be worse in terms of a squash is Brock versus Cena for the world title.
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but
what I'm saying is that, you know, that was up there. You know, the Hero Gatson match was pretty bad as far as being one-sided.
Just between the matches, I'll finish with this because we have a bit finished to get to. I'll finish with this. Given the reputation that PWG had at this point, it is obviously not quite the company it would become yet, but it was getting there quick. This has to be considered, given the content and the people involved, a colossal disappointment.
By the way, my question.
I might have an answer.
What did Paul London spray on Kevin Steen after the match?
I have no idea. Bug spray, maybe?
I was thinking honey.
Oh, I think they actually did say it was honey.
I don't remember hearing them ever answer it, so if they did, I'm sorry for missing it, but I don't remember hearing an answer. So, and then the whole night ends when Kevin Steen gives Brian Kendrick a package pile driver.
Well, if you remember the promo that I called him Kevin Owens, that Steen cut before the match started,
originally speaking, back at Kurt WrestleMania, he called it Wrestle Reunion, but it was WrestleMania. Wrestle Reunion would be the year after, I do believe. It was supposed to be Brian Kendrick versus Kevin Steen 1-on-1.
Almost makes you wonder, what was the original card supposed to be? And who didn't show up that caused all the changes?
I think there's any number of people who probably didn't show up that probably could have caused the change to happen the way that it did. That being said, you did eventually get the, was that the one that had the Hero, Roderick Strong, Rob Van Dam main event?
Kurt WrestleMania?
Yes.
I think so.
Or would that have been Russell Reunion?
Because I think Kurt Russell Reunion had like a huge 6-man tag main event.
All right, I've seen both shows, but it's been a while since I've seen both of them, so I don't remember off the top of my head. All the same.
Anywho, so yeah, that was PWG's Dio, June 11, 2010, from the World Famous American Legion Hall in Reseda, California.
June 27, 2010.
Yeah, sure. You know, Wikipedia had that one right. Wikipedia had that one right.
Yeah, well, screw them.
For folks that don't get the reference, we were talking about another match earlier, and I said that Wikipedia had a certain match time, and this one decided to not believe it, only to realize that his specifically taken down match time was 1 second off.
Yeah, it was the Jerry Lawler Kerry Von Erich match from AWA Superclass 3.
That terrible, terrible match.
It wasn't a bad match.
Yes, it was.
You just don't like it because of the finish.
Damn right.
But that is not a conversation to have today, because speaking of finishes, I do believe it's time for the big one.
Indeed. So as we always do, time for the best and the worst match, and our cash and our trash for this show. Why don't we get the matches out of the way first? I have a hunch that we're probably going to agree on both of these. Oh, Harry, what's your best match on this show?
That would be Akira Tozawa versus Scott Lost.
We would be in agreement there. How convenient. The shortest match both gets the highest praise.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is Scott Lost was on fire here, and Lost was going out there and going balls to the wall because he knew that he was done soon, and he wanted to leave a lasting impression. Akira Tozawa, everything about the guy screamed intensity. And it came off perfectly, and he was in the right promotion where it was understood what he was trying to do, and people loved him for it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. That now that I know that Scott Lost was kind of on borrowed time here, being that he only had one more match at PWG after this one, you can kind of understand why he would go pretty all out with this. The only thing that was missing from this was Ryan Cock, but we're not going to get into that. That's the wrong guy, damn it.
Funny you should mention that, but there's a story there.
Wrong time. I just realized that I had the wrong guy there. And yeah, Akira Tozawa, from here on would pretty much only get better and better and better and better. And like you mentioned, probably one of the most underrated indie talents ever. And I really do hope that he is in the CWC whenever it starts and however the hell long it goes. Supposedly it's supposed to go like 4 months.
Well, I don't know if
CWC.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know if you saw the list of names that was originally scheduled to be involved, but I do believe the original list that got leaked definitely had the name Akira Tozawa on it.
Yep.
I know that it was on the original one, but now it seems like they're down to only 5 confirmed, and they won't name anyone else.
Well, that's because they don't want to spoil the whole list.
That and they're trying not to give away the qualifying matches that are still to come too with various other independent promotions.
Maybe.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember if Evolve's done all of theirs. I think they have.
I know they did 2 of them on their most recent iPay-per-view.
As a matter of fact, I think Evolve and Progress have both done all of theirs, and I don't remember any other companies being named.
Rev Pro had theirs too.
Oh, okay. I do believe they're also working with IPW UK as well. I don't have the exact listings for all the promotions involved, but there's still a list of people that hasn't been announced yet that are going to be announced. And then, obviously, you've had other people qualify through various alternative means.
Like tournaments in Rio de Janeiro?
Pretty much on April 1st, exactly.
Yeah. Anywho.
Did we just pop Sean with that?
Oh, boy.
I heard laughing. I'm pretty sure it was Sean.
Let's go on.
Wasn't me. We'll move on from that.
Yes.
All right, so yeah, we're obviously in agreement on the best match. I have a hunch we're going to agree here. Ari, what's your worst match?
I don't think how you can pick anything other than Ryan Taylor and Brandon Bonham.
We are going to disagree.
Well, I know what you're going to pick, but history being what it is, knowing what we know about the card the following month, it kind of makes sense for Hero to have as dominating of a performance as he did against Gatson. I don't necessarily like it, but it makes sense. Ryan Taylor and Brandon Bonham were 2 guys who PWG definitely recognized as potentially being part of the future of their company and put them in a singles match with ample time to provide that opportunity for them to showcase themselves. Neither one of them came out of that match looking better than they did going in. Hey, Patrick, I'm pretty sure I know where you're going to go with this because I kind of just gave it away. What's your worst match?
Well, yeah, you kind of did give it away, so. Yes, it makes sense. But if you're going into this not knowing what was going to happen the next month, that Chris Hero was going to be in a world title match and Gatson was going to be in an opening 6-person tag, okay, what's the excuse then? This match was way too long, and it's boring. It is boring as hell, and this is your sub-main event, essentially. It is, the second to last match. But
oh no, I'm pretty sure it was billed as a double main event.
I don't know about that.
Check the DVD case and see if it's billed as such.
The only match that's featured on the front, fully, is the main event. As a matter of fact, the only other match that gets any mention in the show's description, because, PWG likes to do show descriptions, is the 6-man tag. So no, this was not treated as a double main event.
Okay, very well then. All the more reason for it not to be as long as it was and as squashy as it was then.
Yeah.
Okay, squashy fine, but definitely shouldn't have been as long.
Yeah, this should have been, like I said, the match times for the last 2 matches should have been flipped. This should have been 14 minutes. The main event, assuming London and Kendrick were actually in their right minds, should have been the one to go 25 minutes. This was it was way too long, and it ended up being boring because nothing happened in it aside from the fact that Gatson got his ass kicked for the first half of the match until he finally hit the damn offensive move. So it just, no. All the no. Anywho, moving on to
Yes,
cash and trash, as we always do. Why don't we go with the positive part of this first? Harry, what's your cash for this?
This really shouldn't surprise you, given my particular profession of choice. My cash for this show is none other than Excalibur. And the reason I specifically say Excalibur is because Excalibur pulled double duty on this show as both the play-by-play guy as well as the ring announcer. I've had the misfortune.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I think he does the ring intros from the commentary booth shaped like a table.
He does indeed. As somebody that's had to do both on an independent show before, it sucks. Your voice is gone by the end of the night. Excalibur was able to hold it together and still be relatively entertaining. He gets... Well, is that your dog, Patrick?
Yes.
Tell him to shut up. Anyways. Your dog is irritating me. He's cutting me off mid...
That was my dog, and you just told nothing to shut up because it's not being heard on the air.
Well, tell your dog to shut up too, then. Anywho, back to what I was saying about Excalibur here. Excalibur catches a lot of crap for the fact that he likes to screw around at the announce table. But, and I think you will agree with me on this, Patrick, when Excalibur is focused at the announce table, it is really hard to pick somebody who's better.
Absolutely. He I even called it earlier. He's one of the best in the business. But that's when he's focused on it.
There is only one person that I can think of who I would put above Excalibur as far as in current independent professional wrestling play-by-play announcers.
I have a hunch I know who you're going to say.
I'm pretty sure you probably do know who I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. His name is Phil Colvin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Phil Colvin Show.
We're going to have to plug this on the WU Twitter and tag him in it and let him know. Nothing but love for the voice of A-Dub. All right, how about you, Patrick? What's your cash for this show?
I'm not going to lie. I kind of actually did have a lot of trouble with this one. So it's going to be a little bit weird, but I'm just going to preface it now and say both my cash and my trash both have to do with the commentary. I'll say that right now. My cash for this, just like you, is Excalibur. And the fact that, yes, he did have his fun, but he still did a pretty damn good job in calling this show. Despite the fact that this was a somewhat lackluster show. It could have been a very, very good one, but it ended up being a lackluster. Sorry, PWG fans, not every show can be, complete gold. And this is one of those. It's not by any means a bad show, but Excalibur helps to improve the quality of the show. Because, otherwise, if you with any average commentator, the show would probably be iffy at best. But he helps bump it up a little bit, just with the fact that he does a quality job on commentary.
The thing about it is he seems so genuinely interested in the product that you can't help but become more emotionally invested yourself.
Well, probably helps he's one of the owners.
Hey, I didn't say that there wasn't reasons he was invested. I just said it helps that he is.
Okay. Just so we're clear, though, with it.
Oh, no, I don't disagree.
But yeah, he's one of those that he seems genuinely invested in it, and yeah, that's what actually helps with it. So yes, that will Excalibur, just like you, will be my cash for this. Now
all right,
switch to the south side.
Yes, I know where you're going with this, so I will let you continue your soliloquy here.
Jeez, sorry.
No, I didn't say that is a bad thing.
But yes, my trash is the revolving door of color commentators. Namely with the fact that, like we said, if you didn't pay very close attention to when Excalibur was mentioning them by name, you were not going to realize who was talking, except for probably Joey Ryan and Kevin Steen, just because they have very, very distinct voices. I did not realize Chris Hero was on commentary until about 10 minutes into the opener. I did not realize for a good chunk of his match that Rick Knox was on commentary for a match. Brandon Bottom sucked at doing commentary for his match. You know, once Joey Ryan got there, it got better, but, you know, Excalibur essentially had to do his damnedest to try and not only do his job, but to try and also overcome the revolving door that he was dealing with the fact that he had to go through 5 color commentators in 7 matches. So I was really not a big fan of that. I don't mind companies that do change commentators occasionally. Shimmer does it all the time. You know, Dave Prazak is always the play-by-play guy, and especially in the early days, they would switch between generally, in the extremely early days, it was always Allison Danger, and Dave would go solo. Then it got to be Dave with Allison and Portia, and then it got more recently Dave with Portia and Veda. And I think there's going to be like one volume that it's like Dave and Portia and Amber Gertner and Lenny Leonard. But Lenny and Amber are only on for 2 matches. The rest of it is Veda and Dave. So, you know, it's not a thing that I just completely flat out hate, but 6 commentators on one show that only has 7 matches is a lot, with only one of them being the mainstay.
I do want to point out that you did forget a Shimmer commentary team.
Well, I was just doing the more generalized ones.
Well, specifically when Allison had her injuries and her pregnancies and stuff, it became Dave, Portia, and then Kelly Skater, too.
Oh, yeah, okay. Fair enough. I did forget that Skater also joined Prazak on commentary.
Skater would be the fill-in for Portia, so I just wanted to give Kelly her proper due here because I'm a big fan of the Raid Tank.
Who the hell isn't?
But
yeah, so that's my gripe here. Barry, how about you?
I almost feel bad doing it to this poor guy, but honestly, I don't think I have much of a choice. What was my worst match, Patrick?
That would be Bonham and Taylor.
The 6-man tag team match. Who was Excalibur's tag team partner for commentary?
I'm trying to go through the catalog in my head. I believe it was also Brandon Bonham.
Yeah, he did not have a very good night.
No,
and I think the problem for him is that PWG putting him out there at the commentary table exposed his lack of personality. And we mentioned while we were talking about the Bonham and Taylor match that there were just so many other guys on the show that they were all both interchangeable with. The problem with that is Brandon and Dustin Cutler are incredibly charismatic. Johnny Goodtimes is annoyingly charismatic. There is no denying the charisma that the Young Bucks have, and by proxy to an extent, Malachi had. Granted, Malachi was mooching, but still, it was there. Ryan Taylor would go on to show a crap ton of personality with the Fighting Taylor Boys. Brandon Bonham had nothing going for him character-wise. And they put him out there on commentary to die, more or less. My trash of the night was Brandon Bonham's commentary specifically.
Fair enough.
And I feel bad doubling up on the guy. I do, but he just did not have a good night.
Fair enough. I mean, a bad night's a bad night.
I'm fully expecting to be tweeted by Brandon Bonham telling me to go off.
I doubt Brandon Bonham knows we exist. I didn't even know he existed until this show happened.
I almost said a word we're not allowed to say on this.
Do you even use Twitter, Harry, for him to be tweeting you anyway?
I do, actually. You can find me on Twitter at HEB the Eagle.
All right.
Anywho, moving on. One final thing before we wrap this up. Alrighty, Harry, this ought to be mighty interesting. What's your final score?
I don't think this is going to be as interesting as you think it's going to be. We live in a day and age in the world of independent professional wrestling where a pro wrestling guerrilla show that isn't rated at least an 8 is considered a colossal disappointment. And the argument can be made that it isn't at least a 9. It's pretty disappointing. This was in the time frame where Pro Wrestling Guerrilla was starting to make its name, but wasn't quite there yet. That being said, by PWG's own admitted lofty standards, this show is a break-even. It's a 5. There are 2 really entertaining matches. There is a serviceable women's match, and the tag team opener, despite being a little bit long, was relatively entertaining. The main event comes in as a major disappointment. Hero and Gatson, knowing what they are capable of, comes in as a disappointment. And even though I'm way behind on my ratings and I need to get back on that, Bonham and Taylor would be near the bottom. It's not the direct bottom because the match wasn't a dud, but I don't know more than half a star. Star tops. My overall rating for PWG's Dio is a 5. Mr. Ketsa, I preface this with the same question I ask you every time we do one of these. Does the streak live?
You actually, I'm surprised you went so low, because I'm usually the harder grader of the 2.
I considered a 6 briefly, but I think given everything that went down with the last 2 matches, I think giving it a 6 would have been way too generous.
Even still, yeah. You've got 2... Okay, we'll go with this. You've got 3 disappointing matches, one of which there wasn't much you could really consider with it because it just sucked. And, sorry, I'm trying to put off a sneeze. Being Bonham and Taylor, and then obviously the last 2 matches are a disappointment, one by being too long, the other by being too short. Bonnieri and LeRae isn't that bad. The 6-man tag, aside from maybe being a little bit long, but it wasn't a bad match.
It was entertaining.
Yeah, exactly, it was. The opener, entertaining, but too long. Should have been 10 minutes, not 15.
10 tops.
Yeah, 10 tops, and that extra 5 minutes probably could have gone to Tozawa and Scott lost, and then all of the matches on the show could have gone over 10 minutes. And nobody would have thought of it, and Lost and Tozawa probably still would have been the best match on the card.
I'm imagining giving Scott Lost and Tozawa another 5 minutes over here, and now I'm even more pissed off at this show.
Sorry.
It's okay, continue.
But be that as it may, that doesn't excuse the fact that something just seems off with the entire show. It never gets going. And that's probably a fact that, PWG wasn't where PWG is now. But the show never seemed to get going like a PWG show always does. That by the end, the crowd's super hot, and they're ready for the main event, and the main event always delivers. Something just seems off. Part of it could have been the fact that there was no world champion. Like we said, Davey was not there. I don't know where the hell Davey was. And me not being the world's biggest fan, I really don't give a damn to find out.
I'm pretty sure Davey was nursing a shoulder injury at this point.
Sure, okay. But a lot of that still doesn't excuse it. He had a lot of opportunities here, but nothing really seemed to deliver in the way that it should have. And yes, this wasn't the PWG that we would get probably within the next 3 years, because about the time that we get to PWG 10, the 10th anniversary show, that's when PWG is almost a household independent wrestling name. And I would probably say even by 9.
I was going to say, I would argue that it would be no more than 2 years, personally.
Yeah, so it could be about that. This show is not on that level. It doesn't even lace that level's boots. So I'm not going to grade quite as hard as you, but the streak's going to continue. I'm going to give this show a 6. Because it's not a completely horrific show. We've covered far worse. But it's not the PWG that we know and love.
All right, allow me to preface my rating a little bit here.
Okay.
Under normal circumstances, I would have been more inclined to give the show a 6. However, I don't think that I can in good conscience call this an above-average show when your main event goes less than 14 minutes, and for the vast majority of that 14 minutes, there are a lot of lulls in the action. Let's be entirely honest here, had the 4 of those men, Lundrick, Generico, be it in whatever incarnation it was, Generico in London against Steen and Kendrick, had they delivered a knockout main event, my rating probably would have been closer to a 7 than a 5.
That makes sense.
Before we get into our closing spiel, because, we still have bills to pay, sponsors to plug, websites to associate with, be presented by a certain organization, ran by our producer, and stuff like that.
Dogs to buy for dogs that won't stop barking.
Yes, exactly. Kiss Phil Colvin's ass again. That seems to be going well for this show. Sean, do you remember what I told you about what we're covering next week?
The best of Saturday Night's main event.
Do you have it?
I could have swore that's on the network.
It's not all of it.
Well,
Maybe
whatever.
the
The documentary part.
Maybe the documentary might be. I thought this one was broken down into introduction match.
It's a little bit of both. It's a 9-hour compilation, but there's documentary stuff interspersed. It's hosted by Mean Gene Okerlund, but it's a little bit of everything.
All right, so let's take you guys inside of the mind of Wrestling Unwrapped here as we get ready to wrap things up for the night, and let's go over the thought process that we had as far as what we were going to do for next week. Obviously, Sean just gave that away. Patrick messages me, because I told Patrick it was his turn to pick the show that we're doing next, because I picked the last two. I picked WCW Sold Out 2000, and you're all welcome for that. And if you haven't listened to that show, I highly recommend that you do so, because it is one of the more fun episodes that we've ever done here at Wrestling Unwrapped. Because it is one of the... It is one of the very few times that we here at Wrestling Unwrapped have ever let loose on a show the way we did Sold Out 2000.
And it's pretty much almost 3 hours of let's crap on Vince Russo.
Yeah, well, this happens. Couldn't it happen to a nicer guy? Would that be the phrasing I'm looking for here?
Couldn't happen to a smarter guy.
Anywho.
Come on, bro. Come on.
I swear to God, it's going to work.
I got 2 words for you. Tank Abbott.
I swear, David Arquette worked. Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. My Vince Russo's turning into Donald Trump, so I'm moving on. So I send a message to Patrick that says, it's your turn to pick. I picked the last one, and if you want to, we can go back to the Fed since we've done independent shows for the vast majority of June, other than the very first day of June, or not June, May, excuse me, that we did of the last WrestleMania that we had to cover. Patrick sends me back a message that says, do you want to work on a set this week? And I said, yeah, I'm fine with that. I have plenty of them unwatched still. Patrick sends me back a response that says, okay, what are some of the ones you have unwatched so that way I can get an idea of what we're working with here? I send a couple of them back, and within no more than 15 or 20 seconds of me sending back the response, I get a response back that said, you haven't watched Saturday night's main event yet? And my response to him is, I got it for Christmas a couple years back. You know I watch my DVDs on random draw. It just hasn't been picked yet. And do you remember the exact wording you sent me back to that?
Actually, no.
There's our next show.
Oh.
When we join you again next Sunday, June 5th at 8-ish Central, 7-ish, or 8-ish Eastern, 7-ish Central. Yeah, I screwed that up. Go ahead, make fun of me. It's fine. I'll give you a free shot here.
Let's go. Come on.
Okay. At 8-ish Eastern, 7-ish Central, we will be covering the best of Saturday night's main event as a 3-disc WWE compilation look into the show that made NBC famous. Okay, not really, but it's to us wrestling fans it is. And some of the biggest moments in WWE history occur at this show as well, including the fact that even back in 2006, they couldn't let Montreal go. I actually liked Shane McMahon, too. That's what made it so damn disappointing. I thought the match was really good until the finish.
And I'm trying to remember if a certain match is on this set that would be the single most watched wrestling show and wrestling event of all time.
If you're referring to the Hogan-Andre match, your answer is no.
Never mind.
Are you referring to the...
Oh,
I think
man.
we just lost Harry.
Did Harry's phone crap out?
Probably, because it was 2 hours. But yes, if in case Harry was going to ask, I was going to refer to the Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan match on the main event because they kind of include the main event with Saturday night's main event, even though the main event was on Fridays. And yes, the Hulk Hogan and Andre match.
Well, they have it separated on the network.
Well, that was an inopportune time for me to hit the 120-minute mark on my phone call.
Yep.
Oops. What was the last thing you heard me say?
You were halfway through asking if I was referring to Andre versus Hulk, which yes, I was. And
the double Hebner match.
Go ahead. What?
The double Hebner match?
Yes. The 30
no,
million viewer double Hebner match.
That was on the main event, not Saturday night's main event.
But I was starting, and Sean was they kind of interspersed some things with the main event and Saturday night's main event.
So for a second here, and those were your plugs while we have the opportunity to do so, and I will take a look at the match listing.
Yes, have fun with that, because there's a lot of them. But yes, we are out of time, so that will be next week when we cover WWE's The Best of Saturday night's main event, The Best of SNME. And hopefully we'll be back on at our normal time. I personally apologize yet again for being so late. It was my fault. Well, okay, it was kind of my brother's friend's fault because my mom made dinner and they stalled everything. So I blame them. Anywho. So once again, be sure to join us next week. And once again, thank you also to Jason Kunkel and the Madhouse Toy Chest for sponsoring the show. Store.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you want pretty much anything that you can think of for collecting, if you are a wrestling fan, action figures, books, shirts, DVDs, action figures, anything that you could possibly think of, talk to Jason Kunkel in the Madhouse Toy Chest. He probably has it.
And if you mention that you heard this advertisement on Wrestling Unwrapped, he'll throw in an extra gift with your order.
And it's going to be something that you actually want.
So I had a chance to look through the match list, and guess what?
What?
It's on disc 2.
Aha! I thought it was.
Apparently, it all comes crashing down, and it hurts inside.
Which means, guess what? We get to talk about Hulk Hogan again. Yahoo!
Hey, you did this to yourself. You can't blame me for this one.
I know.
Then again, one of the other options I gave you, too, was Clash of the Champions, and, well, that would have been more Hulk Hogan.
It would have been slightly less Hulk Hogan, though.
True story. You, Hulk Hogan.
Anywho, moving on. So, thank you to the Madhouse Toy Chest. And until next week, quiet, Harry, because I'm going to get to it. Until next week, for Sean Garmer, Harry Broadhurst, I'm Patrick Ketza. You have been listening to Wrestling Unwrapped here on the W2M Network and brought to you in cooperation with 411mania.com and LastWordOnSports.com. We'll see you next week.
Don't forget to join us here on the W2M Network tomorrow night for an all-new episode of Wrestling to the Max, Monday edition. The guys break down Raw as well as the weekend's happenings. I would imagine you guys will probably cover some of Best of Super Juniors, too.
Yes.
And then if you want the alternative perspective as well, you can join myself, Tony Acero,
and we'll also
Rick
get
Balin.
into the big discussion of what's apparently breaking Twitter of that Ricochet Ospreay match destroying wrestling or not. But go on. Sorry.
Or for an alternative Raw-only perspective, for an entire show dedicated to nothing but the product that you would have watched on Monday night. You can listen to myself, Tony Acero from 411 Mania, Sean's colleague, the Cajun Corner's Rick Balin, and the most valuable producer, all due respect, Jimmy Christopher, for the Raw Reaction Labor Day edition. The champ is, well, technically the champion is Roman Reigns, but John Cena returns tomorrow night on The Raw Reaction. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk next Sunday.
Harry.
Yes?
What edition?
Oh, I said Labor, didn't I? Excuse me, Memorial Day edition of The Raw Reaction. My mistake. I apologize. To sign off the show, Sean, we're done here.
And John Cena, keep your PBR rip-offing stuff to yourself.
If any wrestler is going to be sponsored by PBR, it should be Eric Cannon.
He is sponsored by PBR.
All the more reason for the cease and desist.
Jesus,
We'll see you
shut
next
up,
week,
guys.